Hey everyone, our story begins with an old man lying murdered while his grandson studies the body without shedding a tear. The boy is Jeong, and this dead man was the only family he had left in the world. Blood stains the quiet ground, yet Jeong watches the corpse with curiosity instead of grief or panic. He notices that no tears will come even after confronting what should be the worst loss of his life. The village burns around him, making his unnatural stillness feel more frightening than the destruction itself. Only days earlier, his grandfather welcomed him home and praised him for returning with useful medicinal herbs. Jeong explained that the herbs grew beside a fox den, where he found only kits while their mother was away. His grandfather cautiously asked whether he had killed the defenseless young animals. Jeong was puzzled. Killing them had never crossed his mind, because their mother would return to find her babies dead. His grandfather recognized the danger beneath that gentle expression and chose his next words with painful care. He asked Jeong for a promise, hoping a rule could restrain something that ordinary empathy never had. The warning was absolute: never reveal the true nature hiding inside him to anyone, no matter what happened. Back in the present, a smile finally reaches Jeong's face, but it is not the response his grandfather wanted. He reaches for a sickle, already deciding that the promise died together with the man who demanded it. With the burning village behind him, Jeong runs toward whatever violent answer his newly released nature desires. The story then shifts to Junggrang village, where a prison wagon rattles through a crowded market under armed guard. Inside the barred wagon sits a young murderer whose reputation has already spread through the entire town. Bystanders whisper that the condemned prisoner killed many people with a single sickle and is still remarkably young. A hooded veteran observing the convoy is not interested in justice. He needs someone young, disposable, and easy to replace. The prisoner's age and resemblance to a certain noble make him exactly the expendable piece the observer was seeking. A rock hurled from the crowd smashes into the chained prisoner's head, yet the blow draws neither fear nor submission. The crowd curses him as trash, while Jeong absorbs every insult with the same eerie quiet. Blood runs across his face, yet his hidden smile shows that humiliation is only feeding his interest. After being thrown into Gumok jail, Jeong sits chained and begins studying the room instead of mourning his sentence. He remembers years spent gathering, smelling, and tasting plants beside his grandfather, turning that knowledge into an escape plan. He identifies lizardtail plant, angelica root, valerian, and Yanyang herb among the guard's ordinary supplies. Combined in the right amounts, those harmless plants release a sleeping gas strong enough to drop the nearby guards. When the elite visitor enters, Jeong has already broken his restraints and attacks before the man can finish assessing him. Guard Cam blocks the desperate rush with practiced martial skill, exposing the enormous gap between them. Jeong recognizes a real martial artist and becomes excited, treating deadly resistance like the discovery of a new toy. Instead of killing him, Guard Cam orders a chair and presents the proposal that brought him into the jail. A noble family wants Jeong to act as a substitute for its third son, true Jeong Unmok. The resemblance is extraordinary, but the real heir's polished clothes and tied hair reveal which young man grew up privileged. They promise freedom and money after one dangerous assignment, then offer a red pill as proof of their control. Jeong swallows it without hesitation, allowing everyone else to believe poison has secured his obedience. True Gyeong Unmok praises Jeong for complying, convinced the prisoner has accepted his place in their arrangement. As preparations begin, Jeong quietly watches the real heir and decides the role can be taken more permanently. The replacement walks ahead, unaware that the condemned killer behind him has already chosen a much simpler succession plan. Chapter 2 opens on the aftermath Jeong imagined: fire, bodies, and a sickle moving through people who never understood his nature. His private joy comes from separating human lives piece by piece, not from revenge or any moral purpose. The fantasy ends with Jeong drenched in blood and smiling, confirming that his grandfather's warning had been completely accurate. He remembers killing everyone involved in his grandfather's death, but admits the slaughter was performed purely for pleasure. For the first time, he examines his own expression and wonders whether he is actually laughing. The realization excites him rather than frightens him, because it proves the nature his grandfather feared is finally free. A surviving enemy interrupts the reflection, charging through the fire and forcing Jeong back into the immediate fight. Jeong does not retreat. He focuses on killing the man directly and attacks with a joint strike. The opponent counters with a sweeping blow, demonstrating martial power Jeong has never learned to use. The impact drives him across the room, but pain only sharpens his curiosity about techniques beyond ordinary strength. The man identifies himself as a dangerous martial artist and expects the untrained prisoner to surrender. Jeong studies the man's stance and movement, trying to understand how power travels through the body. Even after being struck, Jeong notices the opponent's acupoint method and begins copying its logic from observation alone. His improvised counter surprises everyone, because a complete novice should not reproduce a guarded technique after seeing it once. The martial artist regains control and slams Jiang down, leaving the killer apparently helpless beneath him. But Jiang uses the opening to wound him again, turning apparent defeat into another experiment. The scene returns to the jail deal, where Jiang is still pretending that the poison pill controls him. His chained hands conceal an important fact: the herbs he consumed have already weakened the supposed poison. Jiang quietly opens a wound and mixes his blood with the antidotal plants left in his body. Once guard Cam turns away, the prisoner's smile returns, revealing that the agreement never made him obedient. He asks what they will do after bringing him out, sounding cooperative while privately calculating his escape. Guard Cam begins explaining the substitution, unaware that Jiang has no intention of remaining anyone's disposable shield. The veteran insists the danger is manageable and describes the noble household waiting beyond the jail. Jiang keeps smiling from the ground, hiding how thoroughly he has reversed their leverage. As soon as guard Cam relaxes, Jiang springs up and tests another copied pressure point strike. The veteran swats him down again, but the failed attack confirms Jiang can reproduce part of the technique. Guard Cam realizes this prisoner is learning during the fight, making him far more dangerous than the original plan allowed. Jiang then proposes the simplest answer: he will take the noble's place for real, not temporarily. He later receives food and medicine, acting like a prisoner who has accepted his assigned role. Inside, he reviews every detail of the man's story and recognizes how easily the household can be manipulated. The noble family is already divided by succession, with every brother surrounded by competing supporters and hidden enemies. Guard Cam believes a controlled stand-in can protect the third son while the strongest factions attack one another. Jiang imagines the identity as a doorway into wealth, martial arts, and people he can study without restraint. By the time the explanation ends, he has already chosen murder over becoming anyone's temporary double. The chance belongs to Jiang now, and the people escorting him still do not understand what they invited home. Jiang arrives at the mock estate alive, wearing the third son's clothes and carrying an identity stolen through murder. He is fed and treated as family, yet the unfamiliar household offers him almost no reliable information. Guard Cam has left him with Go Chan, a lower-ranked guard who assumes the young lord is unchanged. When Go Chan enters, Jiang immediately measures how much knowledge can be taken from him. The guard mentions the third son's old habits, accidentally exposing details the imposter desperately needs. Jiang lowers his voice and orders Go Chan to keep quiet, testing whether borrowed authority will be enough. He then sends the other attendants away, making sure nobody can interrupt the interrogation he is preparing. Go Chan senses danger and decides the third son is behaving far more coldly than before. The guard reminds himself that Jiang is supposedly harmless, but the explanation no longer matches the person before him. Jiang taps the table, using silence and tiny movements to make the guard's anxiety grow. He asks direct questions about Guard Cam and the household, disguising interrogation as a young master's impatience. Go Chan tries to avoid sensitive details, confirming, there is another reason the family needed a stand-in. Jiang smiles because hesitation reveals more than a prepared answer ever could. He casually breaks a utensil, reminding Go Chan that the supposedly weak third son has returned different. When the guard moves to leave, Jiang catches him and applies an imperfect copy of Guard Cam's acupoint technique. The imitation cannot fully immobilize Go Chan, so Jiang switches from precision to physical control. He threatens poison and demands complete answers about the family, its enemies, and the missing noble. Go Chan resists until Jiang attacks again, proving that polite refusal will only make the lesson more painful. The guard crashes down and finally understands that he is not dealing with the spoiled boy he remembers. Jiang finds a practical pressure point and leaves Go Chan helpless enough to answer without killing him. He then produces the alleged antidote and makes obedience feel like the only route back to safety. Go Chan swallows it, unaware that fear itself has become Jiang's strongest restraint. Once the guard yields, Jiang becomes pleasant again and orders him to explain every important person in the estate. The sudden transformation from violence to courtesy frightens Go Chan more than the beating did. Their first destination is Mok Indan's residence, where the patriarch remains bedridden and the succession struggle intensifies. The weakened Mok Indan is surrounded by attendants, medicine, and relatives already measuring what happens if he dies. Go Chan explains that all four sons have supporters, but talent and birth make their positions wildly unequal. Jiang enters in the third son's role, greeting a father he has never met and studying everyone watching. Lady Seo controls the room's social rhythm, presenting concern while quietly protecting her own faction. She apologizes for the third son's trouble, but her stare suggests she is evaluating whether this return helps or threatens her. Her anger flares whenever succession is mentioned, revealing that affection is not what drives her interest. The conversation turns to the brothers and the supporters gathering behind them as Mok Indan's condition worsens. Jiang listens with one hand near his mouth, already organizing the family into useful threats and opportunities. When the formal visit ends, he takes Go Chan with him instead of returning obediently to his room. Jeong looks through an open window and decides to inspect the siblings whose identities may determine his survival. Go Chan begins a private tour, unaware that Jeong is using every answer to reconstruct the dead heir's life. The substitution plan expected attacks from the eldest and second sons, while their guards weakened each other. Young-ho Mok, the eldest, appears idle and troublesome, spending more time drinking than building open support. Yunpyeong Mok, the second son, is quieter and far more dangerous, with guard Cam secretly working for him. The original plan was to let those factions collide, keeping the real third son hidden behind a disposable double. Jeong recognizes the scheme as baiting troubled water, then smiles because he has already swallowed the hook in Fisherman. He admits the strategy was clever, though the people who designed it badly underestimated the chosen stand-in. Go Chan tries to keep the tour orderly, but Jeong keeps probing beyond what the guard was told to reveal. Jeong's smile makes the guard curse internally, because every polite question feels like another hidden threat. Elsewhere, Lady Seok crosses the estate with an elderly diviner, seeking answers about the family's future. She claims devotion to her husband, but her questions keep returning to which son will inherit the household. The diviner grows uncomfortable and asks to leave, recognizing that prediction has become dangerous political evidence. Lady Seok strikes him for resisting, making clear that refusal is not an available answer. She sends attendants away so the next reading can occur without witnesses or convenient misunderstandings. A shout interrupts them as Yucheon Mok trains nearby, drawing attention through sheer physical force. The youngest brother is a genuine martial prodigy, disciplined enough to repeat brutal conditioning without complaint. Jeong and Go Chan hear the same disturbance and turn toward the training ground. Go Chan warns that Yucheon possesses real talent and once defeated the original third son decisively. Instead of feeling threatened, Jeong decides he can learn by watching and asks guard Cam's companion for details. Go Chan explains that foundational martial arts begin with internal training, not merely copying visible movements. Jeong's surprise is genuine. Until now, he had never known cultivated energy existed inside trained bodies. The explanation describes an internal center that gathers and circulates energy through pathways ordinary fighters cannot use. Jeong immediately asks how to build that center, treating a guarded family discipline like another herb recipe. The guard refuses to reveal a secret manual and tries to hide behind household rules. Jeong reminds him that poison, not rank, determines who controls this conversation. A single friendly smile ends the argument, and Go Chan agrees to find something Jeong can study. Jeong also notices mounted warriors arriving, another sign that the household's factions are gathering strength. Go Chan identifies the visitors and worries that violence may begin before their own plans are ready. Yucheon continues training as if politics cannot touch him, which only makes his physical advantage more obvious. Night falls over Mok Indan's private hall, where the diviner prepares a more dangerous reading. The patriarch discusses succession and admits that time is running out before the four sons collide openly. He lifts ritual stones and begins calling upon heavenly strength for an answer about the family's future. The divination erupts violently, overwhelming the old man with energy far beyond the controlled reading he expected. The sealed room strains under the force as Mok Indan fights to hold the vision together. Before the answer settles, an outside presence crashes through the reading and interrupts it at the critical moment. Jeong appears behind the collapsing diviner, his arrival making the supernatural interruption even harder to explain. He greets everyone calmly, as if walking into an exploding prophecy were an ordinary family visit. Mok Indan stares at the third son and realizes the household's quietest piece may be the one fate cannot read. Jeong's interruption shatters the ritual room, leaving Mok Indan furious and the diviner struggling beneath uncontrolled spiritual force. Go Chan rushes forward expecting punishment, but Jeong watches the supernatural disturbance with open fascination. The presence inside the room is not a simple prediction, something hostile has answered the ritual. A twisted spirit surges toward Mok Indan, pouring purple-black energy over his body. The patriarch's resistance fails as the entity crushes his defenses and tries to seize control. Go Chan grabs protective items while Jeong continues studying how the spirit interacts with a living host. The struggle destroys furniture and sends bodies across the floor, but Jeong still refuses to retreat. When the entity lunges again, Jeong moves close enough to touch what everyone else fears. His interference slices through the spirit's attack and briefly separates its focus from Mok Indan. The spirit turns on Jeong, who reacts with surprise rather than panic when its power reaches him. After the immediate crisis, Mok Indan begins striking ritual materials together, desperate to force the entity out. The patriarch admits his methods are failing and needs Jeong to bring the hidden fourth stone door materials. Jeong refuses to obey blindly and asks what he receives for saving a family head he barely knows. He wants martial knowledge, information, and the truth behind the secret tome and seal hidden in the estate. The patriarch tries to intimidate him, but Jeong calmly points out that the spiritual attack leaves very little bargaining time. Lady Seok's involvement becomes another pressure point, and Jeong hints he knows more than he should. Go-chan tries to silence the young master, but Jeong uses rank and danger to keep control of the room. At last, Mok Inden agrees to the requested terms, placing the family's survival above his anger. Jeong demands the answer clearly, preventing the old man from turning a vague promise into another trap. A sealed talisman and ritual container are brought forward as the entity's pressure returns. Mok Indan explains that the materials can suppress the spirit, though he is uncertain they can destroy it. The spirit attacks again, filling the room with purple tendrils before the ritual can stabilize. Jeong throws himself into the path, using observation and instinct to redirect the creature's movement. His intervention forces the entity into the talisman field, exactly where Mok Indan needs it. The patriarch realizes Jeong can perceive and influence the spirit more clearly than an ordinary person should. The trapped entity still resists, grinning through the pressure as if the old seal cannot hold forever. Mok Inden orders Go-chan outside, deciding the rest of the ritual cannot have another witness. Inside the sealed chamber, the entity identifies the medical ward basement and fourth stone door as important. Jeong listens carefully, connecting the spirit's destination with the hidden book and the family's guarded secrets. The entity breaks part of the binding and smashes into the room with renewed force. Jeong draws a sharp arc through the spirit, using its moment of freedom to expose the core of its movement. For a moment, he appears to have won, standing over the reeling entity beside Mok Inden. Then the creature reaches into Jeong instead, testing whether his body can become its escape route. The possession floods his senses with eyes, mouths, and a pressure strong enough to crush an ordinary mind. The room falls silent as everyone waits to see whether Jeong has survived or become the spirit's new body. Inside the ritual chamber, Mok Indan desperately tries to suppress the thing that entered his grandson. The patriarch believes his seal has worked, never realizing the intruder has already slipped beyond his reach. Within Jeong's mind, the possessing entity rages at being deceived by a supposedly ordinary boy. It abandons Mok Indan as its target and decides Jeong's younger body will make the better vessel. The spirit sees Jeong standing calmly inside his own consciousness and mistakes that stillness for weakness. Confident of victory, it floods into him and promises to bury his mind in an eternal dream. Instead, the possession opens a memory, a younger Jeong walking alone through peaceful mountains. He recognizes the mineral spring where he once collected water for the only person who raised him. The quiet waterfall and green trail feel perfectly familiar, but the memory carries a growing sense of dread. Jeong remembers coming here every morning, an ordinary routine from a life that no longer exists. He fills the same wooden bucket while an uneasiness he cannot explain tightens around him. Then smoke rises beyond the trees, and he realizes the isolated home he shared with his grandfather is burning. Flames consume the house, turning his faint dread into certainty that something terrible has happened. He drops the water and runs, calling for his grandfather as if speed could reverse what awaits him. Jeong races through the forest toward the burning home without shoes, breath, or any thought of danger. He finds his grandfather collapsed in blood and begs the old man to wake up. The memory briefly restores the gentler past, showing the old man smiling beside the child he protected. But that warmth is framed by the corpse in Jeong's arms and the blood spreading beneath them. The spirit thinks it finally understands him, assuming grief over this loss must be the boy's deepest weakness. It feeds on the memory, offering to preserve the grandfather forever if Jeong surrenders his body. Dark tendrils enter Jeong, while the entity tries to turn affection and regret into chains. The illusion makes the dead man stand again, confusing even Jeong for a moment. Purple veins spread across Jeong's face as the possession digs deeper into his consciousness. He embraces the old man, but what he says next destroys the spirit's entire reading of him. Jeong admits he did not want to lose his grandfather because the murder robbed him of the chance to kill the old man himself. The spirit recoils, finally recognizing that the love it sensed is fused with an urge to destroy. The tender memories were real, yet Jeong's happiness was never the peaceful life the entity imagined. The grandfather asks why the boy was named Jeong and urges him to live properly after losing what mattered. That advice cannot restrain him. Jeong turns toward the intruder and decides it has shown him more than enough. Before it can retreat, Jeong grabs the creature's face with his bare hand. The entity cannot understand how a human consciousness can touch and overpower it inside its own domain. Jeong is furious that it treated his grandfather like a toy and refuses to accept its false comfort. Asked what he truly wants, Jeong answers plainly, not resurrection, but revenge against the murderer. He intends to capture that man and tear him apart, a desire so violent the ancient spirit panics. His grandfather's last hope was that Jeong might grow into a proper man, but the boy's nature never changed. The spirit tears away and attempts to escape before Jeong can crush it completely. Jiang immediately pursues it through the collapsing mental world, refusing to let a useful mystery flee. The entity dives deeper into his soul, convinced distance will finally give it control. But even the spirit's transformed limb now moves inside Jiang's consciousness, where the hunter has become the hunted. Outside the chamber, guard Cam wonders whether Lady Seok's forbidden plan is already underway. 19 years earlier, the veteran first met Mok Indan while fighting pirates at Hayom. Fighting beside that fearless warrior transformed guard Cam's admiration into lifelong loyalty. Afterward, Mok Indan brought him into the household, where Cam swore to serve him faithfully. Now Lady Seok wants a peasant boy to continue the family's dangerous spiritual tradition. She even orders the diviner to extract the hidden tome and seal from the patriarch. Guard Cam accepted a safer succession plan, but drugging his lord crosses the line. Unable to ignore his conscience, Cam quietly decides to look inside and verify Mok Indan's condition. Inside, the diviner realizes Jiang's captive is no ordinary grudge spirit. The towering apparition is a high-ranking evil spirit known as the demonic monk. Jiang immediately points at the diviner and calmly orders his new servant to kill him. The demonic monk surges forward, and the diviner's protective seal breaks under its attack. Trapped against the wall, the diviner begs Jiang to spare him from the approaching spirit. Jiang refuses because the man heard exactly where the secret tome and seal are hidden. Before the diviner can expose that intent, the demonic monk engulfs and silences him. With the threat handled, our protagonist, Jiang, calls Go-chan into the chamber. Go-chan finds the diviner dead and Jiang already preparing a believable explanation. Jiang cuts his own leg, planning to claim the possessed diviner attacked everyone during the ritual. Go-chan understands the concealment, yet warns that Lady Seok may not accept such a convenient story. Jiang answers by cutting his arm too, adding wounds that make the struggle look genuine. He even refuses immediate treatment, knowing blood loss and pallor will strengthen the deception. At that exact moment, Guard Cam finally enters and sees the disastrous scene. Guard Cam's stunned expression shows that Jiang's staged account has landed exactly as intended. Cam demands answers, but Jiang's subtle smile reveals that the entire performance was deliberate. Later, Jiang recovers in the medical ward while replaying the location he forced from the patriarch. The clue points beneath this very building, behind the fourth stone door in the ward's basement. He decides to wait until night, then search for the family's tome and seal himself. Go-chan returns with only 2 books saved before Lady Seok's attendants burned the diviner's collection. One is a concise dictionary describing naturalists and the supernatural forces they confront. Jiang needs that knowledge because the silent demonic monk is still watching from outside the window. Before he can study further, Lady Seok enters the ward and announces that they need to talk. Lady Seok opens the private meeting by telling Jiang that she wants a word with him. As the Mok family's first wife, she carries both authority and the backing of a martial clan. Jiang greets her from bed, using his injured leg as the reason he cannot stand. Go-chan quietly marvels that his unpredictable master performs the formal greeting perfectly. Jiang knows this visit is not simply a polite call to check on his recovery. Without warning, Lady Seok's female guard flashes a blade toward the bed. Another blade stops Go-chan at the neck, preventing him from interfering. Lady Seok leans close and accuses Jiang of injuring himself to deceive her. She identifies the flaw: a skilled diviner should never become possessed during an exorcism. Then she strikes Jiang hard enough to send him crashing from the bed. Standing over him, she demands to know exactly what he saw and heard during the ritual. Instead of cowering, Jiang lifts his head and laughs openly at her threat. He summons the demonic monk, turning the interrogation into a demonstration of his hidden leverage. The invisible force immediately knocks one of Lady Seok's attendants away. A second crash confirms that something supernatural is moving through the room. Lady Seok cannot see her attacker, but she recognizes the phenomenon for what it is. Jiang uses that uncertainty to ask directly about the secret tome and seal. Jiang turns the chaos into leverage, warning Lady Seok that petty threats will not work. However, Young-ho is not the only heir seeking that position, which gives Jiang alternatives. If she mistreats him, he can simply take his information and power to Yoon Pyong instead. He also invokes Yuchan's martial strength, making clear that Lady Seok cannot isolate him easily. Then Jiang stands on his supposedly injured leg and reminds her that power belongs to whoever holds the sword. He leaves the stunned first wife behind, casually telling her to take care. Once alone, Lady Seok destroys the room in fury at being outmaneuvered. She remembers the mocked child Jiang once appeared to be and realizes that image no longer fits. Refusing to let the tome or seal reach a rival faction, she decides to strike first. Her first move is reporting diviner Shin Mayo's death to the organization called Ghost Shadows. Back in the ward, our protagonist, Jiang, studies the dictionary Go-chan recovered. The book ranks red, orange, and yellow spirits by the danger and abilities they possess. That makes his captive demonic monk a yellow spirit, dangerous but not the highest class. Jiang also realizes it avoided Lady Seok and attacked her weaker guard because strength limits its influence. Green spirits are far older and can move objects or confuse the living, making them vastly more dangerous. Armed with that knowledge, Jiang opens the hidden passage beneath the medical ward. He enters the darkness determined to find the Mok family's secret tome and seal. Jiang descends the hidden staircase and immediately notices how far beneath the medical ward it runs. All this protection seems excessive if the Mok family truly hid only one tome and one seal. Still, a place built with this much care may contain tricks worth learning for himself. He needs more options because the demonic monk cannot overpower someone as strong as Guard Cam. At the bottom, our protagonist, Jiang, locates the fourth stone door from Mok Indan's clue. The heavy entrance opens, but another long corridor continues beyond it. His first step activates a hidden floor mechanism beneath his foot. A massive stone drops from above, confirming that the passage is trapped. Jiang narrowly evades the falling weight and continues without losing his lantern. The next mechanism launches a wave of concealed projectiles straight toward him. He twists through the barrage, using precise movement to keep every projectile from finding him. Then a rolling boulder joins the pursuit, revealing that the real obstacle course has only begun. Jiang vaults across another concealed obstacle while the stone continues thundering behind him. He smashes through a blocking pillar instead of allowing the corridor to slow him. Talismans along the route tell him that something more significant is being concealed ahead. The corridor answers with an enormous field of spikes filling the path in front of him. Rather than retreat, Jiang dives forward and commits to seeing the gauntlet through. After clearing the mechanisms, he finally reaches the sealed passage's far end. Raising his lantern reveals not a storeroom, but a spacious wooden training hall. The worn interior suggests that someone once lived and practiced martial arts here. A small box inside the hall appears to contain the treasure Yang came to find. Inside are both volumes, the complete Yunmok sword techniques and an inner power cultivation guide. Yet the room is far too elaborate to have been built solely for these two books. A heavy chest bears drag marks, proving someone moved it into its present position. When he shifts it, talismans on the floor reveal another concealed compartment. Beneath the hatch sits a second wooden box, hidden even more carefully than the family manuals. The seals around it radiate ominous energy, indicating that someone wanted its contents forgotten. Jiang opens it, and his lantern abruptly dies as darkness swallows the chamber. Touching the grotesque volume reveals a pulse beneath its cover, which appears to be made from human skin. Instead of recoiling, Jiang smiles over the human skin book and its red binding beads. Elsewhere, drums announce a celebration being held for the household's second son. Yunpyong Mok treats the gathering as another step toward becoming the next family lord. He thanks the allies who have joined his faction, pleased with his growing influence. Then Yunpyong calls Guard Cam forward, exposing the veteran's place among his supporters. Yunpyong Mok apologizes for keeping his guests late while the family patriarch remains ill. The flattering visitors accept his explanation and continue enjoying the private gathering. Once the musicians leave, Yunpyong turns the conversation toward Gyungun's lost martial arts. Guard Cam knows the dead heir never possessed martial arts, making that part of Jiang's deception technically true. However, exposing the impostor would also expose Cam's own failure and likely end with his death. Yunpyong Mok mocks Jiang's lost martial arts, pleased that one obstacle to succession seems to have removed itself. Yunpyong praises Guard Cam as a valuable new ally, while dismissing Gyong-un as a weakened obstacle. He asks whether Cam caused the loss of martial arts and offers forgiveness if he did. Cam refuses to explain yet, claiming the truth would force him to spend his life hunting Jiang. Yunpyong accepts the answer for now, but his questions quickly move toward Cam's hidden past. He openly reminds Cam that the veteran once worked as an assassin. That possibility makes Yunpyong wonder whether the changed Gyong-un investigated Cam's background. Cam denies it, but the sweat on his face makes the response look uncertain. Yunpyong dismisses the veteran, then watches him leave with deepening suspicion. He orders Zhou Ilsang to verify Jiang's martial condition and discover what the false heir is hiding. The assignment includes an extra cruelty: break one of Jiang's ankles while investigating. Meanwhile, Jiang remains below the medical ward with the pulsing human skin book. The flesh-like volume seems dead, yet its cover beats like a living heart in his hands. Even our protagonist, Jiang, sweats as he studies the impossible object. He wonders what such a book is doing inside the Mok family's deepest hiding place. A sudden surge of purple energy makes the nearby demonic monk materialize. The spirit trembles before the book, reacting with fear Jiang has never seen from it. That terror confirms there is something extraordinary sealed within the human skin volume. Before opening it, Jiang slams the box shut, because the spirit senses someone approaching. Footsteps above identify an intruder moving through the medical ward at night. Outside, Jo Il-sung slips through the darkness while Go Chan sleeps away from his post. The assassin peers into Jeong's empty room and realizes his target is missing. While searching, Jo Il-sang discovers one of the hidden martial manuals and confirms it is genuine. A hand suddenly grips the intruder's head as Jeong emerges behind him. Jeong smashes him down repeatedly, denying the assassin any chance to explain or escape. The brutal blows leave Jo Il-sang bloodied and apparently unconscious. When the assassin's eyes reopen, Jeong calmly asks whether he is finally awake. He drives a spike down beside his captive and announces that their conversation can begin. Go Chan returns to the medical ward and discovers a masked man hanging upside down. He asks why Yoon Pyong's servant is here, but Jeong only studies the captive. Jeong orders Go Chan to release Jo Il-sang because the questioning will require him on the floor. Go Chan hesitates, fearing the near first-rate assassin will attack as soon as he is free. Jeong answers that he has already placed precautions, so his servant reluctantly obeys. Watching the battered prisoner, Go Chan can only hope his master does not kill him. Once released, Jo Il-sung immediately asks Jeong what he intends to do. Jeong offers a simple bargain: answer honestly, and the interrogation will end quickly. He also promises to reveal where the stolen Yanmok manuals came from. If the captive lies, however, Jeong will cut him down without hesitation. Jo Il-sung agrees, expecting the questioning to be less dangerous than another beating. A sharp pain in his upside-down hand reveals that Jeong has already begun. Jeong raises a blade and asks which finger he just cut. The trick is anesthesia. Jo Il-sung cannot move, sense inner power, or reliably feel the wound. Jeong explains that every wrong answer will cost another finger, then begins the quiz. When the captive guesses 1, Jeong calmly slices again and counts the answer wrong. A second guess fails too, and the blade flashes before the count reaches 4. Only after several cuts does Jeong reveal that he is already finished with that hand. The exhausted assassin trembles, unsure whether Jeong truly lost his martial arts. Jeong's next question is direct. Did Guard Cam tell him to attack? Jo Il-sung answers yes, claiming the veteran commanded him to investigate Jeong. But Jeong notices that answer does not fit the assassin's earlier behavior. If Guard Cam sent him, torture would have forced immediate answers instead of silence. That contradiction makes our protagonist, Jeong, smile and prepare another test. The terrified captive suddenly swears that Yoon Pyong ordered the entire attack. He promises to reveal everything about Yoon Pyong if Jeong spares his life. Jeong appears to accept, then smiles, as he prepares one immediate task for the captive. The request is fatal. Jeong slices Jo Il-sung's throat and tells him to dedicate his life to it. Jeong opens the human skin book and recalls that impure seals require foul energy. Jo Il-sung's blood, saturated with resentment, provides exactly the impurity Jeong needs. The blood flows into the human skin pages as Jeong watches the seal react. The red binding beads crack apart, signaling the completion of the book's impurity. A torrent of blood erupts across the chamber, twisting around Jeong in violent waves. Within that crimson storm, a powerful female spirit begins taking shape before him. The newly released woman opens her eyes, leaving Jeong facing an unknown presence. Inside Blue's crimson hallucination, Jeong kneels beneath a spirit whose age and accumulated resentment make her terrifyingly powerful. The human skin book identifies her as a 5th-rank blue spirit, over a century old and capable of disturbing physical objects. Her most dangerous weapon is hallucination, pain created inside the victim's senses, yet experienced as though every wound were real. The book claims that properly exercising such a spirit would require 10 trained diviners working together. Blue stands over the exhausted Jeong and demands his life force, while the false world presses him toward surrender. She explains that wandering spirits seize living bodies greedily, regardless of their rank or the consequences. Then she mocks Jeong because within this bloody nightmare, he appears to possess no body worth stealing. Jeong answers with a grin, pointing out that Blue is also bodiless and inviting her to take his body herself. His insolence enrages Blue, who launches him across the illusion before he can finish provoking her. Jeong crashes into the ground, but the pain and blood still fail to make him beg. Blue pins him down and insists that resistance is pointless because he has no power inside her illusion. Even while crushed beneath her attack, Jeong casually asks whether she truly needed to use so much force. Blue calls him powerless and again orders him to surrender his life force like an obedient victim. Jeong rises despite his wounds, convincing Blue that this mortal is far less ordinary than he appears. Her spectral fabric coils around him, tightening until even breathing becomes another weapon against his will. Blue offers one wish in exchange for his life force, presenting cooperation as his only painless choice. Jeong immediately questions why she would bargain if she could simply take what she wanted. Blue admits refusal will damage him, but promises to kill him and seek another victim if necessary. After pretending to consider the offer, Jeong says that he does have one wish. Blue leans close to hear it, expecting surrender at last from the bloodied man before her. Instead, Jeong wishes she would shut up and become his servant, turning her threat into another insult. Furious, Blue tears through the red void again, battering Jeong with wounds meant to erase his defiance. As he falls, Jeong stops reacting to the spectacle and begins examining what the illusion cannot reproduce. The blood covering him has color and texture, but none of the warmth, pulse, or living presence he knows intimately. Years spent as the Scythe demon taught Jeong the exact boundary between living blood and death. That brutal experience becomes his advantage. The scene feels painful, yet its blood carries no true life. Jeong closes his eyes and rejects the false sensations instead of struggling against every imagined injury. The crimson world fractures around him as Blue realizes that her hallucination is losing its hold. With one final break, the illusion shatters and throws Blue backward into the real underground hall. Jeong stands before the shocked spirit, proving that the nightmare never controlled him as completely as she believed. Blue's broken hallucination collapses into a blood-red butterfly while Jeong watches her recover from the reversal. She recognizes what happened as release, a rare method of escaping hallucinations by denying the senses that sustain them. Even first-rate diviners struggle with the technique, leaving Blue stunned that an apparent novice succeeded alone. For the first time, she wonders whether Jeong was born with an extraordinary instinct for spiritual arts. Jeong only laughs at her bewilderment, amused that a century-old spirit still cannot understand him. His attention returns to the human skin book lying between them, the object that first released Blue. The book explains that spirits grow stronger with age, making Blue's century of resentment especially dangerous. Jeong concludes that the book is also the medium anchoring her presence to the physical world. Without warning, he grabs the pages and starts ripping apart the object that sustains her. Blue panics because 6 first-rate diviners were barely able to seal that evil book in the first place. She attacks, but Jeong keeps hold of the medium while her spectral force crashes around him. When tearing proves insufficient, Jeong bites directly into the pages and begins chewing the blood-written material. Blue discovers that she cannot touch the sealed book herself, while this inexplicable mortal can damage it freely. The blood Jeong swallowed earlier suddenly surges backward through him, twisting his body with violent pain. Alongside that agony comes Blue's resentment, a desperate hunger for revenge that is not originally his. Jeong grips the spirit and allows the foreign emotion to pull his awareness into the memory behind her grudge. A field crowded with corpses appears, revealing the scale of the slaughter preserved inside Blue's hatred. In that memory, Blue stands armed among the dead, confronting the violence that ultimately consumed her. A purple-haired man with antler-like ornaments presides over the massacre, but the vision offers Jeong no reliable identity. Blue attacks within the memory, only to be overwhelmed and left bleeding amid the bodies. Every flash of the battle clarifies that her century of rage was born from murder and unfinished revenge. The remembered battlefield dissolves beneath a blood-red crescent, signaling that Jeong has reached the heart of Blue's grudge. Blue's blood-filled eye remains fixed on the hatred that has kept her spirit anchored for more than a century. The vision ends, returning Jeong to the underground hall with the damaged book still beneath his hand. Blue's spectral body begins tearing apart as Jeong continues chewing the medium tied to her existence. The torn book lies amid crimson residue while the backlash strips away the spirit's remaining resistance. A red cord forms between them, created by the blood, the torn book, and Blue's collapsing spiritual anchor. The connection tightens before Blue can escape, binding the ancient spirit directly to Jeong. Her resistance fails, and the words she despises are forced from her mouth. She is now a servant spirit. Jeong immediately celebrates acquiring a Blue-rank servant, treating the impossible binding as a successful experiment. Blue refuses to accept her new status and slams Jeong down, determined to punish the mortal who bound her. The attack immediately rebounds through their bond, making Blue experience the same pain she inflicts on her master. Jeong rises grinning while Blue doubles over, proving that direct violence against him now harms them both. He asks about the demonic monk, who remains outside the hall while Go-chan waits nearby. Since they are trapped together, Jeong suggests introductions and asks that they at least exchange names. He introduces himself as Gyeong-un Mok, the identity he is impersonating, then asks Blue what he should call her. When Blue refuses her true name, Jeong cheerfully proposes calling her Crimson Stag Dung Beetle instead. The ridiculous suggestion finally forces a reaction, though Blue insists that no mortal deserves to know her real name. Jeong settles on Blue, borrowing the title of her spiritual rank because she offers him nothing better. He recognizes that the proud spirit will never become useful through commands alone, so winning cooperation must take time. Jeong then asks about the human skin book, hoping its blood-written pages contain more usable spiritual techniques. Blue pretends ignorance and turns away, leaving Jeong to investigate the ominous book without her willing guidance. The strange writing was drawn in blood across human skin, yet its syllables can still be sounded aloud. Jiang recites one passage experimentally, ignoring Blue's alarm until the hidden technique suddenly responds. Purple energy erupts from the page and fastens the book against his body like a living restraint. Blue recognizes an attraction spell and demands to know how Jiang activated it without any formal training. The uncontrolled spell tangles with his breathing, squeezing his chest while spiritual force coils around him. Blue orders him to stop breathing and clear every thought, the only immediate way to break the dangerous feedback. Jiang stills his mind almost instantly, surprising Blue again with the speed of his adaptation. The purple restraints release, and the human skin book finally drops away from his body. Blue explains that his breath became entangled because he cannot yet control the attraction spell's energy. Used correctly, the spell pulls a target's energy toward the caster's lower abdomen, where internal energy gathers. Used backward, it pushes the caster's energy outward and can choke the practitioner through uncontrolled entanglement. Blue proposes testing the technique on the dead man nearby, whose scattered energy still remains inside the corpse. Jiang faces the body and repeats the incantation, aiming the spell directly at the corpse's lower energy center. This time a warm current leaves the corpse and streams visibly toward Jiang's extended hands. The foreign energy enters his palms and runs through his veins instead of crushing his breath. Jiang feels the current gather around his own lower abdomen, confirming the spell can move energy between bodies. Blue watches closely as the novice holds the attraction without losing control a second time. With the corpse's dispersed energy drawn inward, Jiang realizes the attraction spell could let him grow stronger far faster than expected. Jiang draws warm energy from the corpse and finally understands the attraction spell's hidden principle. The power gathers around his lower abdomen, making the shortcut Blue described feel immediately useful. He remembers Go-chan saying internal energy normally takes years to accumulate and imagines bypassing that delay entirely. But the stolen current suddenly fizzles away, leaving Jiang empty-handed before he can secure it. Blue explains that internal energy naturally disperses unless a practitioner knows how to circulate and retain it. Attraction alone cannot add power to Jiang's reserves, though it can support more advanced techniques later. As a first-level spell, attraction is only the simplest of the 8 Awakenings' hidden principles. Blue tells him to form a mental image and guide the gathered energy toward his hand through deliberate circulation. She privately assumes the task is impossible for a novice without a guidebook or formal martial training. Jiang tries anyway, surrounding his body with purple energy while focusing on the route Blue described. The current races into his arm and gathers around his fist instead of scattering. Blue recoils in disbelief as Jiang achieves the circulation she had dismissed as impossible. With one sweeping motion, he releases the concentrated force and sends it surging across the hall. The strike erupts against the room, showing that the newly guided energy can already produce physical force. Blue has known countless prodigies, yet none displayed talent comparable to the mortal standing before her. Jiang studies his empowered hand and decides martial arts may simply be efficient methods for killing opponents. His success also makes him ask about the second level among the 8 Awakenings' hidden principles. Blue nearly answers before realizing she is eagerly teaching the mortal who forced her into servitude. Angry with herself, she turns away and refuses further conversation despite Jiang's confused attempt to continue. A cold trace of energy lingers in Jiang's hand, leaving him with another question he cannot ask while Blue sulks. Elsewhere, Lady Seok's bodyguard enters the Ghost Shadow Pagoda carrying news of the failed diviner. He reports that Shin Mayo died at the Yeonmok household after encountering the third son, Gyeong Un-mok. Lady Seok offers 300 silver coins for the report and 400 more if they accept an assassination. The assigned mission is explicit: erase Gyeong Un-mok, the identity currently being worn by Jiang. The ghost shadows consider whether a spirit could have become a servant, but the gathered experts dismiss that possibility as impossible. They allow that an animal, goblin, or monster spirit might obey, yet insist a grudge spirit cannot become anyone's servant. Even so, their leader orders one of them to kill Yeonmok's third son and pacify the dead Shin Mayo's soul. By morning, Go-chan brings Jiang the brazier he requested, grumbling about being sent on another errand. Jiang reveals the Yeonmok household's secret tome and begins tearing its pages directly into the flames. As Go-chan screams over the priceless manual, Jiang calmly burns the stolen knowledge after taking what he needs. After memorizing every copied technique, Jiang feeds the martial manuals to the brazier and watches their pages disappear. Go-chan panics at the destruction, but Jiang explains that no written evidence matters once the knowledge is secure in his head. Jiang adds that sharing dangerous secrets is how people become cooperative, leaving his nervous guard to understand the warning. Elsewhere, Guard Cam begins the same disciplined morning routine he has maintained since his years as a professional assassin. He makes his bed, changes clothes, sweeps the room, checks his schedule, and straps a concealed dagger beneath his uniform. Guard Cam believes his tedious service will soon pay off when Yunpyeong Mok becomes patriarch and rewards his loyal supporter. A sudden summons interrupts those ambitions, and the veteran hurries to his master's residence expecting an urgent private order. Yun Pyong reveals that Jo Il-sang disappeared after being sent to verify whether the third son truly lost his martial arts. Because the missing operative never returned, Yun Pyong suspects that someone deceived him and demands that Guard Cam uncover the truth. When Guard Cam cannot offer immediate proof, his furious master strikes him and treats the failure as possible disloyalty. Guard Cam stakes his life as a martial artist, promising to sever his own right arm if his investigation fails. Yun Pyong grants only 4 hours and warns that failure may cost far more than the arm Guard Cam volunteered. Leaving the residence, Guard Cam decides that any imposter responsible for this humiliation will not escape his hands alive. He soon encounters Go Chan and attacks without warning, driving the younger guard down before he can explain himself. Guard Cam accuses Go Chan of joining the false third son and demands to know what happened inside Jeong's quarters. During the confrontation, he notices a book in Go Chan's possession and tears it away despite the younger man's protests. The cover identifies it as Yeonmok's Guide to Cultivating Inner Power, a manual that should never have reached an ordinary guard. Go Chan's desperate attempt to recover the volume only confirms that Jeong secretly gave him forbidden martial instruction. Guard Cam realizes the apparent cripple has been manipulating household guards while concealing knowledge no beginner should possess. His anger turns murderous, while Go Chan can only watch the veteran march directly toward Jeong's room. Guard Cam storms inside and finds the protagonist, Jeong, seated calmly, showing no concern about the armed intruder. Without wasting time on questions, the veteran launches a killing strike meant to overwhelm the supposedly helpless young master. Jeong shifts away from the blow and uses the attacker's momentum instead of meeting Guard Cam's strength directly. The reversal sends the veteran crashing across the room before he can understand how his target moved so cleanly. Guard Cam rises and attacks again, but Jeong continues redirecting him with timing that contradicts every report about the third son. The exchange leaves furniture broken, walls scarred, and the experienced assassin increasingly uncertain about the opponent before him. Another sharp counter finally drives Guard Cam to the floor, blood running from his mouth after the humiliating impact. For the first time, the veteran is forced to consider that Jeong's harmless appearance may have concealed a trained killer. Jeong answers the bloodied veteran with a calm smile and a single welcome, as though the violent arrival had been expected. With Guard Cam sprawled at his feet, Jeong turns the failed assassination into the opening move of his own interrogation. Guard Cam demands an explanation, but Jeong acts confused and asks what could have made the veteran so furious. The assassin refuses to play along and warns that one more trick will end with Jeong dead. When pressed, Guard Cam names Jo Il-sang, the missing subordinate sent to expose the third son's deception. Jeong's evasive answer only deepens the accusation, and Guard Cam attacks hard enough to shatter the room around them. The protagonist avoids the strike and taunts his opponent, confirming that this confrontation will not end through intimidation. Guard Cam reveals that he spent 3 years enduring menial service after buying his way into the Mok household. An orphan raised among assassins, he wagered everything on earning power beneath Yun Pyong Mok's future rule. Now he blames Jeong for destroying that plan by killing True Jeong and Mok and making Jo Il-sang disappear. Guard Cam believes murdering the imposter is the only way to escape Yun Pyong's 4-hour ultimatum alive. Jeong admits Jo Il-sang is dead, but hints that another path could still save the desperate veteran. Guard Cam remembers the Inner Power Manual and decides that delivering its second volume might satisfy his master. He grabs Jeong by the hair, presses a poisoned dagger against his throat, and demands the missing volume. Jeong agrees without resistance, allowing Guard Cam to believe that fear has finally broken his confidence. As the veteran reaches for his prize, Jeong calmly reveals that the second volume exists only inside his memory. Before Guard Cam can react, Jeong seizes his wrist and activates the first level of 8 Awakenings, Attraction. Purple force coils around them as Jeong begins drawing the assassin's cultivated inner power into his own body. Guard Cam feels his strength draining and realizes the supposed cripple is absorbing energy through direct contact. He slashes free and knocks Jeong backward, sacrificing position to break the terrifying connection. Although the veteran escapes the grip, his hand trembles and his familiar reservoir of inner power feels unnaturally empty. Guard Cam insists that one strange technique cannot defeat a first-rate martial artist with decades of killing experience. Jeong accepts that raw strength remains against him and quietly decides to use a different method of execution. The assassin charges again, certain that his speed will finish the wounded young master before another trick begins. At Jeong's command, the invisible demonic monk intercepts the attack and catches Guard Cam's dagger in mid-swing. Guard Cam freezes when an unseen force stops his weapon, while Jeong promises to demonstrate a more decisive trick. The spirit twists the veteran's arm and returns the dagger toward its owner as though reclaiming misplaced property. Jiang reminds guard Cam that the weapon, its poison, and the murderous intent behind it all belong to him. Then Jiang repeats the veteran's own claim that a man without martial arts could never have killed Zhou Ilsang. Those words expose the betrayal guard Cam reported to Yun Piong and leave him facing the logic of his own accusation. Instead of surrendering, the cornered assassin concludes that the impostor must have killed Zhou through some hidden method. Guard Cam attacks once more, choosing violence over confession as Jiang's supernatural trap closes around him. Guard Cam's renewed attack fails when the demonic monk turns his poison dagger back into his own body. The blade sinks near a vital point, and the veteran realizes pulling it free could trigger fatal bleeding. Even while wounded, Guard Cam smiles because the weapon carries a poison he prepared as his final advantage. Jiang asks what he wants, allowing the desperate assassin to believe that the poison has created bargaining power. Guard Cam offers the antidote and travel money if Jiang releases him and helps him escape the mock estate. Privately, he plans to act humble until he recovers, then return later and kill the dangerous impostor. Before that plan can develop, Guard Cam coughs blood and feels his body weakening despite circulating his inner power. The veteran recognizes the symptoms of poisoning, but cannot understand how his own protected body became contaminated. Jiang explains that the dagger was coated with his blood when it entered him during their earlier exchange. Years of eating poisonous herbs made Jiang's blood highly toxic, turning Guard Cam's weapon into a delivery system. Jiang accurately lists ingredients from the assassin's poison mixture, proving he understands exactly what now courses through both bodies. He also reveals that the open window was deliberate because cold air slows the poison spreading through Guard Cam. With his confidence gone, the veteran begs Jiang for the antidote he had intended to use as leverage. Jiang approves of that submissive attitude and proposes that they become partners under a very unequal arrangement. He remarks that cooperation would have spared them trouble if Guard Cam had shown this respect from the beginning. Then Jiang drives the dagger deeper, using pain and approaching death to make the veteran's submission unmistakable. Guard Cam's body convulses under the punishment before the exhausted assassin finally loses consciousness on the floor. Jiang tends his own wounds and concludes that confronting Guard Cam now was fortunate, since the man knew his identity. The protagonist had always intended to eliminate that witness before the veteran could expose true Gyang Un-mok's replacement. He briefly considers Go-chan another liability, then remembers the younger guard never revealed the existence of a second manual. That silence proves useful loyalty, so Jiang decides Go-chan remains more valuable alive than dead. Go-chan emerges from hiding, revealing that he crawled through the room while the two stronger men fought. Jiang praises his discretion and orders him to send everyone away while the unconscious Guard Cam is handled privately. Once the room is secured, Jiang activates attraction and draws the veteran's remaining inner power into himself. The borrowed warmth enters his body but quickly fades, unlike the cold death energy gathered in the medical ward dungeon. Jiang notices that death energy lingers and produces the same vivid sensation he experiences when taking a life. Blue Spirit observes the process and tells the demonic monk that the force dragging Jiang onward is truly demonic. Meanwhile, Yun Piong explains that his cruelty toward Guard Cam was a calculated loyalty test, followed by planned kindness. A guard then rushes in and reports that Guard Cam tried to kill Lord Gyung-un, destroying Yun Piong's confident interpretation. Yun Piong rises in shock as the apparent assassination turns his secret agent's failure into a dangerous public crisis. News that Guard Cam tried to kill Lord Jong-un reaches Yun Piong's faction and immediately overturns their earlier assumptions. Yun Piong demands to know where his missing agent went, only to learn that Guard Cam has also disappeared. One angry supporter draws his sword and insists they cannot allow the third son to escape after attacking their man. Another retainer warns that harming Jong-un now would only strengthen the testimony against Yun Piong's entire faction. They finally suggest using Guard Cam's former profession against him, because failed assassins are punished by their own organization. The plan appeals to Yun Piong. Rather than move openly, they can let the assassins silence Guard Cam and target Jiang. That night, the protagonist Zhang attempts to form a proper G-center, but feels his gathered energy scatter repeatedly. After another failure, he calls Go-chan inside and asks why circulating energy refuses to settle at his center. Go-chan is astonished that someone ignorant of martial arts yesterday can already sense and circulate GI overnight. The guard offers to inspect the problem directly, placing his hand on Jiang while contributing his own inner power. Jiang follows the instruction and focuses, while purple death energy begins circling far more violently than Go-chan expected. The guard discovers Jiang truly is circulating Gei, without wasting energy, a level of control far beyond an ordinary beginner. Then Go-chan senses something cold and unfamiliar obstructing the flow and concludes that the energies are incompatible. Jiang recognizes the difference himself. Living inner power feels warm, while the death energy inside him remains unnaturally cold. Rather than stop, he reverses his circulation, trying to force the incompatible currents into a new pattern. Go-chan warns that reversing Ji can destroy control, but Jiang continues before the guard can restrain him. The death energy erupts violently, striking Go-chan and leaving him bleeding while something within Jiang exults over mortal arrogance. Blue Spirit explains that a bound attendant spirit can become an evil spirit if its master dies by another hand. As the spiritual backlash grows, she warns that Jiang's death would release the contract restraining her forever. Elsewhere in Haiyuhua, a masked diviner named Sak introduces himself as an agent of the Ghost Shadows. Lady Seok's contact orders Sak to release a reverse spirit through a corpse and use it to find the killer. She is startled that only a junior diviner was sent, but Sak quietly reveals that he outranks the dead Shin Mayo. The diviner forms hand signs over the corpse, and green light tears a malicious spirit free from the dead body. The awakened entity strikes its former host, erupts through the chamber, and leaves the corpse horribly transformed. Sak controls the reverse spirit with practiced gestures, while the watching nobles recoil from its violence. He directs it to seek the person who killed its master, turning the dead man's resentment into a tracking weapon. The spectral creature races across the rooftops and through the Mocha state, following its target's spiritual trace. Blue Spirit notices the approaching presence first, and flinches as the spiritual trail breaches Jiang's room. Countless grasping hands surge around Blue Spirit as she stands between the reverse spirit and the meditating Jiang. The hands close around Jiang, revealing Lord Jiang-un as their target, while Blue Spirit prepares to stop the attack. Diviner Sak repeatedly stabs his talisman, driving the reverse spirit deeper into the dead man's resentment. The creature attacks Blue Spirit with a mass of grasping hands while Jiang remains seated within its reach. Every wound the spirit inflicts on the bound woman transfers the same pain to Jiang through their contract. Blue Spirit welcomes the danger, imagining that enough suffering might finally kill the mortal restraining her. Sak renews the ritual, and the reverse spirit surges harder as its hands claw toward Jiang's body. Blue Spirit demands more, but then dismisses the attack as pathetic and destroys the grasping limbs in one burst. The violent backlash throws Sak across the distant ritual chamber, stunning both him and the nobles who hired him. The diviner cannot believe his reverse spirit was overpowered, and realizes the target commands something far beyond a yellow-ranked entity. Sak demands additional payment before risking his life against a high-ranked evil spirit, raising his fee by 1,000 silver coins. Lady Seok's contact protests, but his explanation that stronger spirits can cause literal disasters forces her to accept. Sak also reveals that diviners possess ranks, and a higher-ranked Ghost Shadows operative has already arrived to assist. A young woman steps from the darkness and identifies herself as a Gi-ranked diviner, one of only 3 within their organization. Her confidence unsettles the patrons, yet Sak admits that the newcomer is his superior, despite her youthful appearance. The new diviner enters Jiang's room through the spirit link and concludes that Lord Jiang-un has almost no chance of surviving. Blue Spirit mocks the reverse spirit for trying to interfere and dismisses it with overwhelming supernatural force. The intruding presence collapses, leaving Jiang's room wrecked and Go-chan unconscious beside the demonic monk. Blue Spirit studies Jiang's aura and finally recognizes both Death Gi and Dark Gi inside a living human body. She recalls that he discovered attraction alone, achieved circulation without understanding it, and now gathers death energy while alive. Jiang opens his eyes and confirms that reversing his circulation prevented the different energies from scattering. He explains that the reversed flow gathers inside him, although he still has not formed a normal Gi center. Blue Spirit asks whether he is truly human, unable to reconcile his living body with the death aura surrounding it. Jiang ignores the question and asks what happened to the room, quickly learning that Blue Spirit repelled an invading presence. He notices the injured demonic monk and unconscious Go-chan, while Blue Spirit casually claims the guard was probably sleeping. When she mentions a reverse spirit, Jiang asks for an explanation, only for the proud entity to dodge the question. Blue Spirit suddenly senses another troublesome presence approaching and warns Jiang before fading from ordinary sight. Jiang looks up as Blue Spirit warns that another troublesome presence has entered the room behind them. Black spiritual residue scratches across the floor and draws Jiang's attention toward the unseen intruder approaching through the chamber. Blue Spirit identifies the approaching servant as one of the Aimei Mangriang native to Yo-Yo Mountain. A swarm of red-eyed insects called Guyo begins emerging from the darkness and spreading through the damaged chamber. The episode ends as the swarm called Giyeo becomes the next spirit sent to threaten the false third son. Alright everyone, that's it for today. See you next time.